Maybe you don't know.
This time, this time, this time, this time, this time to build, 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 this time power, this time to build power, this time to build power, this time to build power.
What's up, everybody? I'm your host, Chris Hampton. Welcome to episode 159 of the Power Company Podcast, brought to you by PowerCompanyClimbing.com. I am back here in Lander, Wyoming, training for spring trips and honestly just getting a lot of things done, which feels really good. I just recently got back from Houston, and I wanted to say thanks to all of the coaches at the Houston Momentum gyms for having Nate and I over and for going through the workshop with us. We had a lot of fun, so thank you guys for that. We really, really appreciate it. Coming up in my schedule, if you are interested, I'll be speaking at the CWA Summit. May 13th through the 15th is the dates of the summit, and I'll be there talking about how the modern climbing gym is letting down the core climber. This is something I'm really, really interested in. Obviously, I deal with a lot of climbers. I talk to a lot of climbers, and I really feel like there are some things, some small things that gyms could be doing to really set climbers on a better path. And I'm going to discuss the shortfalls, the shortcomings, and what gyms could be doing better. I'm going to give some strategies for gyms that they can implement pretty quickly to make things better for the core climber. Immediately after that, I'll be at the Performance Climbing Coach, May 16th to the 18th. That's at City Rock in Colorado Springs. If you've not signed up for that yet and you want to come, do it. There's a link right there in the show notes in your pocket supercomputer. All right, as you can tell, I'm jumping into this thing quickly today. I'm busy. I got a lot of things going on. But I also want to take some time to introduce our next guest. I have the unique opportunity to be able to reach out to people and have these conversations and set up these conversations that might seem a little strange to people if I weren't a podcast host with 150 some episodes already out in the interwebs. And sometimes I find people online who I'm just drawn to their story. I want to know more about them. The way they carry themselves, present themselves online is interesting to me, and I just want to know more. I feel like those people have something to teach me, and I at least owe them my undivided attention, which is hard to give on social media. This is one of those cases. Today's guest is Brittany Leavitt. Brittany is a preschool teacher at the Smithsonian, which is one of the coolest things I've ever heard of. She's also an REI outdoor instructor. She's worked with or is working with Brown Girls Climb, Outdoor Afro, Color the Crag, the Appalachian Trail Conservancy, as well as in 2018, she was part of the first all-black U.S. team to summit Kilimanjaro. So her resume is big. It's wide. She does a lot. And so I specifically want to thank Brittany for taking the time to schedule this conversation, to sit down with me to have this conversation during a trip in which she said she wasn't going to do any work, because this is essentially work. While these conversations are very organic, there's definitely an element of I'm going in really wanting to learn from this person. So my guests are always in a position where I'm looking to them to teach me. And that's work, frankly. So I appreciate it. Thank you so, so much. One last thing. In this episode, I thought I was just tired and my voice was going out. But in fact, I was coming down with the flu. So you'll have to excuse my voice, my coughing, and Brittany, I hope that I didn't hand it over to you as well. All right, let's get into it.
Okay, now you're a real climber type of thing, where it's like, no, you can be someone 9 to 5 and be a weekend warrior, or you can be someone that wears their Jordans to the crag because that's their approach shoes, you know?
Power. This time to build power. This time to build power. This time to build power.
You assume like, oh, they're not gonna get that. And it's like, actually, they do. You just have to take that time to break it down for them, for their level, and they really will understand. And so I think that's really cool about, like, they're really lucky because their classroom is the museums, and so we're able to go through like really deep conversations on like photography and like breaking down like the insides of a camera and being able to give them cameras, and like we're gonna go look at
So they get to come to the Smithsonian for class.
Yep. So our classroom's
cool.
classroom's in the Natural History Museum. So I've been there for 5 years. And it's really great too because I actually grew up in the Smithsonian as a kid. That was like the weekend thing that my dad would do. We'd go.
You had my dream life.
Yeah, we'd go to the museums and like hang out. And I went through phases where I thought I was going to work in the museum, like as a paleobiologist. I took a course, got certified, so I volunteered for a while.
Wow.
Like nerdy side, and really into fossils and like.
Me too.
They're just really cool. And now I'm teaching kids like how to navigate really museums and understand how what they see is like can be projected in everyday life, and helps them just expand their idea and like conversations and honesty in the real world, because you know they need that.
Very cool. It's like part of this is like speaking to 6-year-old me who just loved dinosaurs and fossils and, you know, wanted to be a paleontologist. And the other part, sorry, I'm losing my voice here. Too many of these conversations. The other part is like talking to this side of me that has really emerged in the last couple of years, where I want to give more people a voice and like tell people the ideas that other people are having, and, you know, just let people know we can talk for an hour and people want to hear it. You know, tens of thousands of people are going to download it and listen to what you have to say. And this has become one of my favorite things for that reason, you know. So to do that for kids and just to teach them that so early is amazing.
It's really fun. To the 3-year-olds, you know, that's also this time when they're learning their independence.
Yeah.
So there are days when I come home, I'm just like, all right, I had a magnetile thrown at me a couple of times.
Oh
today.
yeah, I bet.
But it's like, I understand, because you may not have all the words that you want to say. Like, I get it. You're frustrated at me. We're going to talk about it. We're going to recognize it. And we're going to talk about alternative ways of not.
What an amazing thing to teach kids when they're young. You know, my wife is a social worker in Lander, Wyoming, and works with elementary school kids. And it's the same kind of thing. Like I wish I would have had her in my school when I was a kid, you know, to learn those skills then, instead of having to wait until I was like 19 or something and just growing up as an idiot boy, you know. But I'm going to jump way ahead here.
Yeah.
Because I've been wanting to talk to you about roller derby all damn night.
Yeah.
And I've been holding it back so we didn't get it all the juicy stuff out. How in the hell did you get into roller derby?
So, my friend actually started a league in Salisbury. So this is when I was living on the Eastern Shore. Started the Salisbury Roller Girls. And I've always been an active person. Like, I've done volleyball, tennis. I was an equestrian rider for 10 years. So, and a long distance cycler. Like, so for me, trying something new has always kind of been my way. And it was like one of those, like, after a really rough breakup, like a tense, like, high school sweetheart 5-year type of thing.
Seems
and I'm
to
like,
be the way we all discover new things in our lives. Yeah,
exactly. I was
get
like,
your hair cut and try a new thing.
Yeah. I was like, you know what? I'm gonna try roller derby and see what it's all about. And I already inline skated, and I was also like into skateboarding. I wasn't like really great at it, but I was into it. So I kind of, in my mind, I'm like, I already have that kind of background. But what's really cool is in that space, like building community and like being part of sports that build community, like they teach you from like the start. So people will walk into like being on a team not knowing how to roller skate,
Yeah.
and within a month they'll know how to actually do crossovers and understand the diamond and like
Yeah.
learn, like, break everything down, learning the proper ways of hitting, because most of the time when people think of roller derby, they think of like old school bank track where like
Right.
it was very dramatic,
Pushing each other into the
pushing
walls
each other,
and,
like pulling hair, or if they see whip it, they're like, oh, that's what you do. And like,
Right,
actually, we have rules, and like we're allowed to hit each other, but there's like regulations, and like the rules also change over time. But so there's actually two different types. There's the bank track, which is like what people often see with like the raised up, and then there's the flat track, and that's what I did, was the flat track for 3 years.
That's so damn cool.
Yeah.
I worked at a skating rink for years when I was like 17, 18, 19, you know, and just loved it intensely. And I love to like go skating with my daughter, and she's always so embarrassed because I'm like, I'm a good skater, and she's like, Dad, you're showing off. And I'm like, no, I'm just skating. Like, deal with it. Your friends think I'm cool, you know. But I love it. You mentioned equestrian sports and long distance cycling, right?
Mm-hmm.
Were you like, was there a strong women of color influence in those sports when you were getting into them?
No. So, and I say that in a sense because the way that I grew up, I actually grew up as a transracial adoptee. So I grew up in a white household. So
Right.
during my time with a lot of the activities I partaked in, like obviously there were people out there that were doing it, but I just was never really connected, or, you know, my parents tried as much as possible to try and connect me to my own community, but
Right.
you know, it's hard if you don't know. So
Sure.
a lot of the times, like, yeah, in the equestrian world, no, I didn't have anyone to look up to. Anytime I saw like another Black woman or a woman of color, like on a roller derby team, like it was like, all right, so it's not just me, like we are doing this. So yeah. It took a lot, a few years before realizing and building that strong community.
Yeah. You made an Instagram post a while ago that I thought was really fascinating, and it led me down this like Google rabbit hole of Darlene Anderson, like the first, I think that's her name, the first woman of color. She broke the color barrier for roller derby, essentially. How important do you think that is, to have the role model who looks like you to look up to?
It's very important. Very, very important. You know, it's kind of like in the way of kids, just realizing that you're not the only one is like a key idea of like isolation, and that also bounces into like mental health. So there's like these like fine steps that people may not always like realize what it breeds into.
Yeah.
And just, you know, knowing that you have a sense of a community, and I like to use that word a lot, a sense of like knowing, you know, that you can be in this space and not have to work towards it. And obviously, like for us, especially like in the POC world, but like we're always working towards whatever space we're trying to get into, but knowing that we can hold ourselves accountable, holding, but in a sense, there's a term, affinity spaces, so making spaces for ourselves is key. And so obviously for her, she was probably the only one for a while, and like maybe when she retired, she finally saw someone that looked like her being part of it. It's just creating that like stepping stone. And and I like to use this example too with my teaching, and it's something as simple as hair. So my hair is really curly, and I try to allow my kids and understand and know that the hair that you have is beautiful, and so wear it whatever you want to wear. And so sometimes I wear my hair out in an afro, and they're like, oh, why is your hair like that? I'm like, oh, that's, you know, that's just how my hair is, how my body is. And but it also, I may only have one Black child in my classroom, but that idea, knowing that her hair is important to her, and seeing that at a younger age just helps that stepping stone as getting older. It's like, not battling, oh, I need to like fit in or I'm
Right.
type of thing. But yeah.
I think it's kind of fascinating that, you know, I watched this argument happen on Facebook a year or so ago, of all these white guys arguing about, well, why does this person need to see somebody like them? You know, why can't they see past the color? Why can't they just see them as humans and be inspired by them? And I'm like, that's easy for you to say because you're a white dude and there's 500 white dudes to look up to already doing it, you know? And when I was a young kid and I was breakdancing, and then when I started rapping, even more so, there were very few white people doing it, you know? And it never really occurred to me why I latched on to the Beastie Boys and Third Base and then Eminem, you know? But it was because they look like me. You know, I loved the other rappers and was inspired by all of these other rappers, but I definitely latched onto the ones who look like me, you know? And I think that's just a natural thing to do, to be able to like see what's possible.
Mm-hmm.
It's so much nicer than having to try and imagine the whole thing just out of the blue, out of thin air, you know? And I think that's something important for white people to just remember is like, it's really easy for us to look, especially in the climbing world, and find people to look up to,
Mm-hmm.
you know, to model ourselves after, to be inspired by. It's really, really easy. You know, and when I came up climbing, I can think of 2 climbers of color for like the first 15 years that I climbed, you know, so there just weren't many to look up to. And that's where I think like Kai and Megan are so important to that culture.
Definitely. And yeah, when you brought that up too, the whole like, well, why can't you just go out and do it? And it's just, and you pretty much explained it perfectly in a sense of like, there's these steps. So, you know, for us, it's like very historical. Just, yeah, we can get out and do these spaces, but also for us, we see these spaces as like harm, like
Right.
from the woods to these trees that probably were used like for lynchings to, you know, trying to go to a gas station where probably the owner doesn't want you to be there. So there's a lot more things for us to consider versus like, you know, I'm just going to get my pad and go out there and like, it's going to be great. There's a, you know, for us having that stepping stone of people being willing to go through that suffering and that, you know, frustration to be able to like bring us here, even though, you know, it's not over. Racism is
Sure.
not over.
Not even
It's,
sort of, yeah.
You know, via social media and the ways that we see it now, there's parts of it that has improved, but now we're just able to see it more every day in our lives. And so when people can huff and scuff, I'm like, oh, that happened in the past. I'm like, actually, no, that happened. Like, a lot of things that happened in the past still happen. They may happen in different ways.
Right.
But for us, it is a lot more emotional that goes into the steps of being a climber, being a backpacker. And so, yeah, when you have someone who's willing to like, I'm going to go out there and I may get some pushback, but I'm going to like, you know, elbow my way through in a sense. It gives other people that idea of like, okay, if they can do it, I can do it. Also, we can do it together.
Mm-hmm.
And like kind of building that long term, like opening the door. And then as you're doing it, you're like, I can now open up a door for someone else to come through and like kind of create that like beauty and chain. And then that connection of like you're seeing yourself represented and also seeing yourself represented in multiple ways too, which I also bring up as a key point because we always think about, you know, all POCs and especially in the Black community, not everyone grew up in the same way.
Right.
So therefore, you know, we look up to a lot of people, but also really being allowed to say we're not all the same. Not all of us may listen to rap. Not all of us,
Right.
you know, may had a hardship of growing up. And so really being able to use your voice and like say like, oh, I am still part of this community, but I just may have had a different experience growing up as well too. But I'm allowed to be myself type of thing.
Yeah,
too.
that's super interesting to think about, because that's something that white people just fall into naturally. We've populated this climbing community, and and we have lots of different backgrounds, and no one ever, like, it's not really thought about. We're all just climbers, you know. But I definitely fall into the trap of pigeonholing people. You know, it's a reaction, and I try to catch myself reacting that way. And I'm sure it happens even more so when you're like the obvious face that shows up at the crag that doesn't look like everyone else. Then I'm sure you get pigeonholed a lot. And it's not like, oh, even though, you know, you all have the same skin color or whatever, they're still a diverse group of people within themselves.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's pretty big to think about and to remember. I was, I think this happened shortly after I recorded the Brown Girls Climb episode, and I was at a crag in Lander, and it's like this off the beaten path crag that not many people go to, and we're all there a few of us by ourselves, and this black gentleman walks up the trail, and you know, he's obviously not a climber, not a super outdoorsy person. He's dressed like he's not a super outdoorsy person, but was so fascinated by it. And we talked for a little while, and I explained some things, and then he made the comment that, well, black people don't really come up here and do this, you know. And I was like, wow, like he's never been in this world before. This is his first encounter with climbing, and he just knows instinctively, like, this is not a space that has a lot of people of color in it. And I found that it kind of blew my mind. Like, I've talked about this with my wife a lot, because I just didn't know what to think about it, you know. Super interesting. You had white parents?
Mm-hmm.
And they came to your roller derby. Are they matches?
Bouts. They're called bouts.
Okay.
Yeah.
I like that even better.
Yeah.
They came to your bouts, and you said they were nervous at first. Your dad, extremely nervous.
Oh yeah, my dad was a nerd, like proud nerd, and would bring a book, and
which is why you grew up in the Smithsonian.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah. I
So
take a
cool.
lot of things after him. He would bring a book, and when he knew that I would get on the track, and we can kind of explain a little bit more like the rules. Like, I would be more of a jammer often. He would look in his book and read, and wouldn't watch me for the first couple of times I started. And then one day he finally decided to watch, and he was like, "This is really cool." And I'm like, yes. Because, I mean, obviously my parents were much older too. So the whole kind of like delicate, very traditional, like as a young girl, like, should I really be on the track pushing other people right now?
Right,
and like
right.
falling down. And so they were always kind of like hesitant I was going to get hurt. And I still say this all the time. I'm like, well, if that happens, it happens. And my mom has learned to like be okay with my saying of that, because beforehand she would not. And my dad would be like, okay, sure, whatever you say type of thing. But then it grew on them, and they got really pumped. And so my siblings would come too, and watch, and like having friends. And it was really cool to like just see like a turning point for them, because it was kind of like a learning idea of like, oh, they're learning a whole different generation of the way like a woman kind of represents themselves. It's not the very like Susie Homemaker style,
Right.
where, you know, they're allowed to like do whatever and like come home with bruises along on your side and arms, and like be okay with it. And
so you've got all sorts of barriers you're trying to break through all at the same time in different directions.
Oh yeah, and still am, especially with my mom. You know, there's a lot of things that we talk about and conversations that we have, and for me it's a lot of like language talking, because there's a lot of things that she would say, and I'm like, oh, you know, that's actually not something that we would say in this space, or, you know,
right,
let's think about that in a different way type of thing. And so, you know, always teaching, but
And I think that's how it should be. Like the generation coming up should be educating the older generation about the way things are changing, you know?
Yeah. Yes.
And in a non-judgmental way
Yeah.
for the
yeah.
most part, because the older generation just doesn't know different.
Mm-mm.
You know, it's what they've been programmed to know, to do. So tell me what a jammer is.
So the jammer is someone, I always tell people, like, if they've seen Harry Potter and Quidditch, it's like the golden snitch.
Yeah.
So the jammer is the one who actually is scoring the points. And so the way to score the points is get past the blockers. And each blocker that you get past creates a point. If you knock out another jammer, it's it's been a while since I've skated, but it's a power jam. Yeah, a power jam. So therefore, the standing jammer is allowed to go through. They have control of the jam, and so they can go through and try and score as many points as possible until the other jammer, who's in the penalty box, gets out. So normally, what happens is, like, the jammer will go through, try and grab as many points, and when the other jammer is about to get in, they'll do what's called a call off. So they'll just, like, hit their hips and let the refs know that they're calling off the jam, and then that jam ends. So jams are normally about 2 minutes. They can be up to 2 minutes long, but you can call, depending on the strategy that you and your teammates have decided, you can call it off early if you become lead jammer. It's kind of harder, I guess, when I explain Derby, like, without, I normally like have a map of, like, this is
Right,
placement. Sure. But
well, it sounds like, you know, the jammer has some control over what's going on the floor,
Mm-hmm.
and there's a lot of importance to that sort of, like, you're scoring the points, you're kind of setting the pace for what's going on. And, you know, after having talked to Bethany and the other girls, that's sort of how I feel about what you all are creating. This whole movement is, like, it's massively important, and I just get to sit on the sidelines and watch it, and, like, watch you all running past blockers and scoring points. And what you just described feels to me like watching this evolution of Brown Girls Climb and Color the Crag and Brothers of Climbing, and just seeing it all happen as a spectator, essentially. You know, I get to come and interview you, and, you know, like, I'm the newspaper reporter at the roller derby bout, you know. But do you ever feel that way? Like, the work you're doing is important. Lots of different types of work you're doing is important. Do you feel like you're running past blockers, scoring points? Like, it's this urgent, exciting, pressure-filled situation?
Oh yeah, there's a lot of mixed emotions. I definitely feel like with the movements and, like, spaces that have been created, there's been definitely, like, scoring points and, like, in a sense, yeah, scoring points. But, like, really being able for, like, the industry and, like, the climbing community, like, our voices are becoming louder and being heard, and like, things are changing, and not only in, like, community wise, but thinking bigger, and, like, companies and brands, and, like, a lot of brands with sponsorships and that athletes, like, they're now learning and thinking about, let's think outside the box of, like, who we want to choose. Like, let's make it more community, like, oriented based. But also just seeing, you know, with Color of the Crag, and, like, Brown Girls Climbing, Brothers Climbing, just the booming of so many other great affinity spaces happening just across the country, and that are so important for our community, because not everyone can come to a festival, or not everyone can, you know, Brown Girls Climb, our meetups are slowly kind of happening around the country. We onboarded some new leaders, but we're not in every single state. So when someone gets inspired, you know, they're like, I want to do this for my gym, I want to do this for my community. That's a big win, because it's saying, like, they feel the confidence and they see the need that needs to happen, and they want to take that effort and know the steps. And for us, it's really about giving tips and tools and resources, and just, you know, we're not holding it for ourselves. We want this to be, you know, for our community and for everyone. And so we want people who have that like buzz of wanting to
Yeah.
continue on passing the baton in a sense. Because we won't all be doing this in our 50s. Maybe we will. But you gotta create
There's
those.
rappers rapping in their 50s
That
now.
is true.
So
That is true.
I mean, anything can happen.
Anything can happen, but just it doesn't stop with us. And
Yep.
and kind of like what I said earlier about like we're all very different and we all have different learning styles and different ways that we want to see spaces. So I think that's what's been really cool via like spaces from Brown Ascenders to Play for All and like these spaces that are just growing and growing and whether they got inspired because they saw like an Instagram or they got inspired because they were at the festival. It's like it's especially in the last 2 years of seeing the growth of a seed of important needed spaces and really conversations too with gyms, like seeing people feel confident going up to their gym and being like, hey, like this hold that you have right here is super problematic. You should probably consider taking it down, and not only taking it down, but educating yourself of why it's inappropriate versus trying to like, oh, it's fine. It's whatever. It's just old. It's like, it's more than that.
Right.
It's more like if you're a community in open space, you want to really take that time and be like, oh, I know this doesn't affect me, but I can see that it affects you. And I want to figure out why and learn more about it type of thing. And like slowly we're seeing a lot of that, but also slowly sometimes you kind of just see like the very facade of like for show, like, yeah, we did it, but it's more like you need to, what else are you doing diving deeper in? Like you can put up signs saying that you're inclusive.
Right.
But like really how inclusive are you? What are you doing? Not only with your staff, but with the community and things of that nature.
Yeah. I love that in the middle of that you said, but we're not in every state yet, as if like you were almost disappointed, like, well, we should be in every state. Why aren't we in every state? And I can imagine that there was a time at the beginning of Brown Girls Climb and at the beginning of Color the Crag where it was like, this is such a new thing. It's a one time, like, let's have a meetup. There's 3 of us, and you can't even imagine it happening in another place. And now you're like, well, it should just be in every state, And you're totally right. And I just think it's cool to see that difference, that change in thinking of, let's make this thing that we really want, my friends and I really want. And then you start to see the importance of it and you start to build it. And then everyone else lets you know how important it is by getting super excited about it,
Yeah. And then I will also add too, in a sense of it, when I was doing my road trip, it was really interesting just to hear about people who know maybe about those spaces, but like this is their first time actually maybe climbing with another person and being able to like have that space to, just feel comfortable to release the frustrations or their excitement, because not everyone may be able to like travel out to, if they're in one location, like one spot in California or one spot in Texas. So it's really, I don't know, for me personally, especially, I would love to just be able to go literally every community neighborhood, like, doesn't always have to be a major city, and just build that like community and be like, these people are here, and like let's figure out how we can grow from that, and then kind of like ghost down, like, you all have this. And you all can now build however you feel like it's more what you need type of thing.
That's really cool, not needing to feel like you have to have a hand in it all the time. Like, here, let me just plant the seed, and now you water it and you prune it how you want it and create this thing that you need. Let's talk about the road trip a little bit.
Yeah.
What was the impetus for the road trip?
Why
not just take a vacation? Because you work a full-time job, you do all this advocacy work. Why not just take a vacation?
It actually originally started as that. That was always been, I've always had that dream. And I feel like a good chunk of people had that dream of doing like a nice cross-country road trip, hitting up all the national parks.
Yeah.
Just living it out. And for me, I guess a lot with the work that I do, I wanted to like add in like a new element to it and meet other people who want to just get out and climb and want to get out and climb with other women of color. But then I also was like, I would love to hear like other people's stories and not just like, yeah, we're getting out and climbing and that's it. But I also want to know like why you climb. And I really wanted to emphasize that too, in a sense of I wanted our like not only our community, but everyone see like why climbing is important for other people, in a sense of not having to be the dirt bag that lives like 5 minutes outside of Bishop. Like,
Right.
they're weekend warriors and like, people
Yeah.
who are in graphic design or teachers who have that same mentality and passion, but often their voices aren't heard or seen. But they also, understand like what's happening in the climbing industry. They also see what's going on in like all the national crags too. And so I really wanted to amplify their voices as well. So it was, in a sense, the road trip was kind of me, like I wanted to take a break and like ride around, but then I'm like, I also wanted to use this space to like step back and uplift other people's voices that, maybe this is like their one time that they're like, I said my piece and now I'm just going to go back and do my thing. Or,
do you think you're capable of taking a vacation? I question this about myself sometimes. That's why I'm asking.
No, I don't think I've tried. Actually, I've only looked at my email one time. I forgot to put a away message. So I feel like that's a improvement versus like looking at it almost 24/7. It feels like I took my very first like vacation last year when I went to Joshua Tree, and I just climbed. I didn't do anything. Hung out with friends, ate tacos.
Yeah.
So I am capable of doing it. But I also have a lot of ideas that I want to do.
Yeah.
And a lot of my ideas aren't just like around me. It's a lot around of like just being with people and getting connected, which I laugh because I'm also someone that doesn't. I also like hanging out by myself too, but it's like this weird thing of like I want to just meet new people and just hear their stories and just like listen. I love listening to people.
I feel your pain.
Yeah.
I'm the same way. I'm an extremely extroverted introvert.
Yeah.
So.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, you had 3 questions you were asking everybody.
Mm-hmm.
What were the 3 questions?
So the first question was what their passion was outside of climbing, / how they have transferred it into climbing. What frustrations that they see in the climbing community, what they see like personally and just in general, and then what's their kind of their take of the future of climbing.
Yeah.
And I also kind of pinpointed like personal and then also community wise. And it was really cool to just listen to everyone's passion and perspective. Because I had a really great span of climbers. So some that have been only climbing for 2 years,
Right.
to some who've been climbing for 13 years, and some who just want to, or strictly boulders, to those who are pretty multi-range, like trads, like their jam type of people.
Yep.
And it was just really great to hear, how they got into climbing. Some people, like one of the great stories was they met someone at a bar, and the person at the bar told them about climbing, and they're like, I'm going to go try that. And like now they've been climbing for over like 10 years around the world, and like all because of simple conversations that they had at the bar. And I think that's really cool because everyone's climbing story, I guess, is always different, but we don't get to talk about it as often. But yeah.
Did you run into anyone else whose passion outside of climbing was roller derby?
No. No.
That's sad.
But there are climber roller derby people, but I wish I had too. If you're out there, that'd be pretty cool.
Did you see any themes like with what people thought the future of climbing was going to look like? And were all these people of color that you're talking to?
Mm-hmm. These were all women of color.
All women of color. Okay.
A common theme was, especially the gym community, like understanding like the Olympics is going to happen. There's going to be like that big boom that's going to happen. Like we were already seeing a big boom especially in the indoor industry due to like
massive
movies, Free Solo, Dawn Wall, and Real Rock and all those things. And so really seeing that partake. I think also really seeing that there are stepping stones of trying to build a community space like for us, and like understanding that we don't have to try to like be, or like, I don't know, I guess kind of try to mold ourselves to be in like one space. We can build our own climbing community and climbing space. And like really taking the time to acknowledge and understand the land. And so in a sense of really honing in on like learning about the indigenous history in the community in the spaces, and that was something that was like in the frustrations too. That was a common theme for frustrations, and it was also kind of like the common theme for the future of like really seeing people taking more time and understanding where they're climbing. And I was kind of having a discussion too, like there's some places where I know it's hard to like have like information like at Waco where you can actually watch like a 20-minute video and like learn about the importance. It would be a great dream to kind of have something like that in every crag space, because I think that would also help, especially when people are transitioning to gym to crag. That was also a common theme too, is like the frustration of like not the education that is there, but not as many people take up the education, or like there isn't as much support in the education. Maybe your gym has like one session of gym to crag, and it's maybe not as fully detailed as it should be. So yeah, it was a good like conversation all around.
That warms my heart a little bit to hear that people do feel like it's going in a good direction. Because I feel like it is, but I also understand that I'm not living the same struggles, so I can really only see it from the outside in, you know? And I'm guessing that we're doing the right things and trying to move in the right direction. And we're nowhere near, not even sort of close to perfect or having it done. You know, but I think the conversations are starting, and so it feels good to hear that seems to be what people believe is happening. You know, so that's good. Frustrations. What were the common themes? And we don't have to like be super specific.
No. Because kind of like a general idea of like being able to own that space. So whether a crag or gym, you know, if you walk up, and kind of like the conversation we were having earlier, like walking into a space and people are already assuming that you may probably climb like super low grades when you're maybe like a V10 climber, and or not really acknowledging like why when you enter in these spaces you have to deal with a little bit more of, you know, conversation, or deal with more like beta spraying, or dealing with people not just owning your knowledge that you have. That was a big common theme. You know, like I'm an outdoor instructor like at REI, and I tend to like just keep myself like low key quiet about things, and sometimes that was a big thing too, is like especially with just the idea of like having to like put out credentials of like, yeah, this is where I climb, this is how I climb, like I deserve to be here too, versus
like you have to give your resume every time you meet somebody,
versus showing up and being like, hey, like I'm here climbing too, just like you're climbing too. Small talk and chat. And that was a big common theme. A big common theme was, I guess, competition too, in maybe the gym setting, feeling overwhelmed in the gym setting for a lot of newer climbers I was speaking with.
Overwhelmed, like just that there's so much going on in general, or there are ton of egos flying around in the gym. I mean, that's just something everybody deals with, sadly. Explain that a little bit more. I'm just curious how to.
I think it was a lot more to do with like overwhelming with like egos, or like I guess in the beginning like where to start. Like if you wanted to start climbing by yourself, like versus like, you know, I think it's a privilege to think about like, oh, if you had a friend take you or like partner or something.
Sure.
Like you already have that like buddy system of like, okay, you have my back, like you're gonna walk me through this, versus if you're gonna walk into a space and be like, where do I even start?
Yeah.
I watched this video. Okay, I'm just gonna
like some sort of an onboarding,
Mm-hmm.
like here's how you join the community.
Yeah.
Sort of a thing could be helpful. You're totally right. Climbing gyms, like when I started climbing, were a very exclusive sort of atmosphere. Like that's how it felt. That's how we all treated it, you know, not proud of that fact, but that's how it got treated. And it was an exclusive group that was like, you're in or you're not. You know, if you're just there visiting, you're just there visiting. We don't care about you, you know. I had never thought about that, but that's how climbing gyms were back then. They were just small, little niche places. And maybe some of that has carried over into these bigger commercial spaces, and there's still not a good way of onboarding people and having it be a fun, inclusive community that's easy to plug into. I hadn't thought about that at all. And I'm totally grilling you selfishly because I'm going to talk to a bunch of gyms soon about how they're letting climbers down, and just hearing all these ideas from people other than myself. My ideas are mostly training related and progression related, but hearing these other ideas of community and inclusivity are super important. So I'm just being totally selfish right now. The road trip was sponsored by Patagonia. Is that right?
So I pitched, like I got to pitch it. So I didn't think it was going to happen, because I was like, I mean, I've gotten to work with them in other spaces. So I was like, the idea I'm pitching may work, because I was kind of honest and blunt about the idea of like, you know, we see like these big road trips happen, but it's normally done by like white dudes or people who have the time to like shell out like a month or, you know, whatever. So in a sense, I wanted to be able to have that experience, but also like showcase like this is possible, that you can get your fulfillment maybe only 2 weeks, maybe a week, and doing it in a way where and I called it like solo road trip, because in a sense, I was on the road by myself, but I was never really alone. I was always like climbing with someone, and also meeting up with friends that were in the area too.
And meeting a lot of people you hadn't met before.
And so kind of giving that sense of idea too, of like, you can also have that experience of, you know, reconnecting with yourself, but also just kind of learning and getting connected to other people in a sense, and taking that time. So it was pretty cool that they were like interested in it, especially because I wanted to showcase like in our community, in the Black community, Indigenous community, POC community, that like this is something that we also enjoy doing too, and and not catering. Like I'm not doing this trip to cater to like white people in a sense. I'm catering it to my community, and
for sure,
uplifting, you know, our voices in a sense. And so I think my honesty in that was pretty helpful. Like,
cool. And the questions you asked everybody will eventually make their way onto the internet as interviews, and you're not sure exactly what that format's going to look like yet, or you are?
So I've written a blog piece, and then there's going to be like photos. I took like photos of all of everyone climbing and like having their interview. So kind of in a sense we're still working on like the editing of like
Yeah.
what like the final is going to look like, because I've switched it up multiple times. But yeah, so I'll definitely have a blog on their website, Cleanest Line, and then the interviews are going to be posted on the internets as well, Instagram, and or other places as well too.
Cool.
So,
And if those aren't out by the time this goes out, then I'll make a point of, if you let me know when those come out, I'll make a point of sharing them around,
yeah,
'Cause
definitely.
I would love to read it. I would love to see all of these answers. And you're doing it for your community, and you should be. But I think the climbing community at large should be paying attention to it and learning from it, because these are really valuable questions, and there's going to be really valuable answers come up. These are the people that we want coming into the gyms, and that are, they're buying memberships and they're becoming members of the community. And why wouldn't we be listening to their super honest feedback? I have never in my life filled out a feedback form in a gym ever, and I bet there are hundreds of thousands of other people who haven't either. So getting this sort of really honest feedback I think it's going to be a really great resource for people that they should take advantage of. So can we talk a little bit about Color the Crag and what you do there? And before we wrap this up, we've been going for like 45 minutes already, but we should. I just want to know, like, how did the concept come to be? Like, I think it's all the groups, well, not all the groups, but several of the POC advocacy groups get together to do it. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
And who are the groups?
So the brainchild of Color the Crag is Bethany, who created Brown Girls Climb, and Mikhail, who created Brothers of Climbing, and a couple other people. They came together with the idea of like, let's create an event where it's geared towards focusing not only our community in climbing, but just celebrating those who have been climbing and being in this space and community before us, and those who are here now, and kind of creating that stepping stone for the future. And so the first year, it's always been held for the last 2 years. It's always been held at HP 40, which is like a world-class bouldering space and area. Reasons why we had it in Alabama too was really to showcase like in that space of community that in the South, history in the South is always, especially with our communities, not.
I hadn't even connected it to the history. of the
not
South.
great. So really recognizing like there's a space for those climbers that here. So kind of like uplifting and supporting that space and community. And so first year we only did it for Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Then the following year we decided to we're going to amp it up, go big, and actually do it from Thursday to Sunday. And what's really great too about the festival is a lot of things is we offer workshops, but all of our workshops are free. All of our workshops are done by our community, by athletes who are represented that are POC. And we try to do workshops, not only that are climbing workshops, but those that are related maybe for mental health in our community, or, learning, understanding, leave no trace, or focusing on, wanting to build spaces like this in your community. How can you, what are the steps? Because, you want to do this, but you don't even know where to begin. And so, Color Crag, yes, it's a climbing festival, but like the end goal was making it much more bigger, and realizing that, there's so much that happens not only in the climbing community for us, but in other outdoor spaces as well. And so the I guess kind of the theme kind of grew bigger and bigger. So the third year, which was this year, was one of the biggest year.
Yeah.
You know, kind of had the same concept, Thursday to Sunday. We had workshops. We, added a lot this year of like doing more offsite. So like having ropes versus just like bouldering workshops. And then also, switching up our keynote versus just having like a climber keynote, but someone that's working not only in the Alabama community in the outdoors, and being able to hear the work that she's been doing, but also kind of what goes on and like how people can get connected. And so it was really great to kind of like just expand it out a little bit more versus just like we're just doing like climbing because some people come to the festival and they don't climb. They're just there because they want to be in community. They want to be in that space and be surrounded by like the love and the laughter, the tears, like being able to have heavy conversations, because that was a big thing too. As people say, like they're never ever able to have these conversations with people because maybe their partner may not understand, maybe their family doesn't understand, maybe their friends or community. Right. And so being able to just kind of open up and be honest, not only honest for themselves and honest and kind of like taking a break from society. It's kind of like what that feel of like not having to act out or like act or there's term code switching, so having to perform in a sense of in a voice just to be
just to fit into the situation. Or
so that can just literally go out the window. And so we tried to do as much as possible as a festival to make it accessible. So we had buses that picked people up from the airport that would deliver them to the ground. Some people drove, and the shuttle would take everyone back to the airport. We had a dance party, we had a concert. So it was a great way just to celebrate what we love to do, like art. North Face was like one of our big sponsors, and so Sam Elias, who last year did it as well, did a really cool art piece. And so what we did was like lay down the table, and people would just come up and like add their own pieces to it. Yeah. And so he did another piece.
He did a thing similar to that at like Memphis Rocks recently.
Yeah. And so he did another piece for it this year. And it was just like a great way for people to like, I'm just going to break out. Oh, art. Let me just like do my thing. And so afterwards, just seeing like it was a figure eight, and just all of, the different perspectives of mine thinking of like, this is what my art, or this is my little piece to the festival.
Right. And I'm contributing to this thing.
Yeah.
I'm not just somebody who bought a ticket and came and am watching the concert and, hanging out. I'm helping create something with this whole community.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, with every festival and everything, like you learn, there's a lot that you learn like on the behind the scenes in a sense, but it's a process. It's not something that can happen.
Sure.
It can't happen in a month. It takes about a year to plan out, and having meetings with sponsors and brands and trying to get athletes. And what's really cool too, for the festival, like having brands come and see like our community and then maybe take back of like things that they need to work on or ways that they maybe interact with like athletes. They may want to they like switch up. And so like our biggest thing is like we don't want them to like come in asking questions, but like if they come, like if they have big takeaways, the big takeaways, like a lot of these people may not know about your brand, and like sometimes people who come to our festival, it's their first time ever climbing ever, and they wanted to do it in a space where they felt safe and comfortable. And
totally
so yeah.
Very cool. I hadn't really thought about this at all, and I don't know why this had never occurred to me, but where does the model for something like this come from? Because if we look at like the first people to break color barriers in other sports, I don't know if there are, festivals for people of color who play baseball or who do roller derby or whatever it is. Do you think it's just because climbing is more community based than athletic based? And where did the model like come from? What was the I'm just curious. I had never really thought about the like building of this space in all these other sports and all these other communities as well. I'm sure it happens and I just don't see it.
I mean, definitely nowadays, I think it happens because we have so many different platforms like meetups and things of that nature. So I think really the idea was also to kind of take what happens online and bring it out into person. So, with all the like Facebook groups and meetup groups.
Really fucking smart.
Is, you're talking online and things like that, but like bringing that space into like existence live where you can actually see these people and be a part of it, learn and like come back and like
right.
Not only maybe learn and come back and just be like, I'm going to bring this festival with me, but I'm going to bring it back with me in like a very smaller way. And so that's starting meetups in your own gym or, know. So we kind of, with the festival too, in a sense of it help create other spaces for other people to just bring back home.
Yeah, just this big domino effect.
Yeah. And that's kind of like the big goal too, is like, this festival may not always be around. So we want you to bring these tools that you've seen today and bring them back to your community and get your community fired up and, know that you have people that you can ask questions all around the country for support. Like you have support and you can bring all of that to your people to create that support. So
cool. When is the next one?
To be determined right now.
Is it usually like same month, same?
It's always kind of been the same month, same space, but yeah, right now it's to be determined.
Figuring it out. Okay, cool. Well, it's all over the internet, and people can plug into these groups pretty easy online. Instagram, Facebook, all over the place. Before we wrap this up, and before I completely lose my voice because it's going quickly, what are your answers to the 3 questions? And you can't say roller derby as your passion. You have to pick something else. So.
Oh no, roller derby is not. I mean, it is one of my passions.
Okay.
So some of my passions outside of climbing, photography, music. So I love going to concerts. I'm also a big musical nerd. So I love going to like shows. And I like spending time in coffee shops and reading. I'm really into coffee. I love making it. Love learning about it. I mean,
you're an introvert that loves coffee shops.
Yeah, because I can sit in the corner with my headphones and listen to podcasts and drink my coffee or like read a book. So it's like I'm being social, but not having to talk to anyone.
Okay, I got
it. And my frustrations in the climbing space have kind of always been just recognizing just not having to do credentials, not having to I guess I don't know. For me I love climbing because in a sense, not just for like the mental aspect, but it's because it's fun. And so the idea of like the frustrations, like if you go to a place and you're only climbing V0, then you're not climbing hard, blah, blah, blah. But in my mind, I'm like, depends on how my body is and what I'm feeling type of thing. Like it doesn't, I try to take the numbers out and just have fun.
And there's some V0s, they're hard.
Yeah. Oh yeah. But also just recognizing the voices that are out there right now that are making the changes and understanding that, climbing there isn't a mold of what a climber looks like. And so often, with the movies we see, like documentaries and things like that, it's always often like that's the mold of what a climber looks like. And that's the only way to, crush hard is if you're able to build out a Sprinter van and live in Yosemite for a month, and that's
Right.
that's your accreditation. Like, okay, now you're a real climber type of thing. Where it's like,
Yep.
no, you can be, someone 9 to 5 and be a weekend warrior, or you can be someone that wears their Jordans to the crag because that's their approach shoes.
Yep.
Like
Totally. And to be
like-
perfectly honest, I see a lot of people who are just in the Sprinter vans, just trying to live this like dirtbag lifestyle so that they look the part. That's not what makes you a climber. How hard you climb isn't what makes you a climber. And I think the perpetuation of that is frustrating.
Mm-hmm.
So,
I think also frustrations and something that I mentioned, I think common theme is just understanding the land and really taking the time to get connected. We all get hyped and psyched and like want to like hop on rocks and fall majority of the time.
yeah,
but
99% of the time.
But taking that time to understand like who was here, who is here, and like why is this place special, like taking the time to recognize that there's going to be places that are going to be closed because an indigenous community uses the space for ceremonial use. Instead of trashing and bagging about, oh, why is this happening, or why are they taking back their land, learn the history of why it's important for people to take back their land, learn the history of why like these places are closed. Like that's, and even though there's like points like we're progressing, there's also points where we're like stepping back, and it's like, and that's a big sign of privilege and like not wanting to learn other space. I think that's another big frustrations for me.
Okay, now that you've gotten a little heated with your frustrations, where do you see the future?
Well, the future, I mean, kind of in a sense of switching, seeing the idea of what climbers look like, or space, seeing, the gym industry is going to boom, and the Olympics is happening, but seeing people interested in a sport that they've, given it a try, especially in our communities, and being like, oh, wow, never thought I could do this, or, gave it a try, didn't like it, but this is cool, and it's cool that you do it. So, like, having that conversation and, like, not creating this, like, bubble of, like, oh, we have too many people, we don't need any more type of people, especially mainly focusing in, like, indoor space. Really seeing the future of climbing, kind of having these conversations, and being willing to learn that not everyone is perfect and everyone's going to be making mistakes, and so we need to step back and look at what mistakes that we're missing, taking the time to improve on those mistakes.
I think we have to keep learning,
Yeah. You're like as a teacher, you never stop learning. You're always learning something new. And if you think you don't need to learn anything else, in a sense, like, every day we're always learning something.
At that
new.
point, you've lost it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we've been talking a long time here,
Yeah.
and I know you're tired. It's been a long day. So thank you for taking the time and putting so much energy into this conversation. I appreciate it hugely. And I think it's really valuable for people to hear this kind of perspective, and the work that you did on your road trip, I'm really looking forward to. So thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to me ramble.
Yeah. I've been in this sport, this lifestyle, whatever it is you want to call it, for a really long time now. And I recognize now more than ever before that my perspective on climbing is drastically skewed by my experience in it, both prior to climbing and within climbing itself, and that includes the early years up to now. All of those experiences have come together to help me form my perspective. So it's become even more valuable for me to hear other people's perspectives so that I don't lose sight of what actually is going on out there. Because otherwise, frankly, I just would. My perspective is not the only one. My experience is not the only one. And I appreciate Brittany and everyone else who's come on here to talk about their perspective and their experience, sitting down, taking the time out to talk to me and explain to me how they see things. That makes my experience as a climber richer and better, frankly. So thank you, Brittany. Thanks to everyone who listens to these conversations where I'm just really trying to absorb and learn as much as possible from my guest. I'll have links in the show notes to find Brittany on the interwebs, so make sure you go into your pocket supercomputer, click those, find her on the interwebs. The project with Patagonia will be out soon, and I'll be linking to that on my social media as well. If you're going to be at the CWA Summit, please come and listen to me. I would really appreciate your feedback in the discussion as well. And if you haven't signed up for the Performance Climbing Coach Seminar in Colorado Springs immediately after the summit, go do it. Links right there in your show notes. For all of the rest of you, you know where to find us, powercompanyclimbing.com. You can find us on the Facebook and the Instagram at Power Company Climbing. Get involved in the conversation over there. I'm always posting things that hopefully will make you think, and I would love to hear your perspectives there as well. And you can get involved in the conversation on Twitter. It's just not going to be with us because we don't tweet. We scream like eagles.
This time, 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 power, this time to build power, this time to build power, this time to build power. 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 This time to build. 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 This time
Can you tell me before we leave, can you tell me your roller derby name?
Oh, yeah. My roller derby name was Betty Believe It. And kind of my tagline was like, she's smooth like butter, believe it or not.
I love it.